Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening to those of you on Zoom, Facebook Live, and also Torah Anytime. Great Torah content, TorahAnytime.com. Join us for some good Torah Shom over there, and thank you very much for hosting this year. Okay, tonight I'd like to see a few ideas over here about Moshe Rabbeinu, about the general idea of what's going on in Egypt. So we're going to start with the following idea. So if you have a Chumash, we're on page 292. So we're in verse 8. So we're just recapping over here the fact that the Jewish people came down to Egypt, and then we said, there's a new king that arose upon Egypt that didn't know Yosef, and he says to his nation, Hine, behold, Am Bnei Yisrael, the Jewish people, they are more and they are stronger than we are. Let's be clever than they are. Perhaps they become too many. There'll be a war. They will be added to our enemies, and they will fight against us, and they will leave the land. And so therefore, they placed upon them different taskmasters, etc., etc. So Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky says that if you look at the claims that are being made against the Jewish people, they don't sound as crazy as you would expect from the word get-go. So let's go through it again. Remind ourselves what happened. Yosef makes his way down to Egypt. Pharaoh has a dream. Yosef gets taken out of jail. Okay, we skipped out parts in the middle. But Joseph gets taken out of jail. He interprets a dream for Pharaoh. Pharaoh says to him, you are one clever cookie. I want you to be in charge of all my monies. And I want you to be in charge to be the second in command of this country. And Yosef goes, yes, your majesty. And he becomes second in command. He gathers together for 7 years all the grain that he can, and everybody else gathers the grain also. And unfortunately, everybody else's grain rots, and only Yosef's grain remains. And therefore, now they come to Yosef. We see this in the end of Parasha Pearls. We spoke about it a little bit. Brian spoke about it, actually, when he spoke about his Torah on Friday night. And they come to Yosef and they say, we got nothing to eat. And Yosef says, well, give some money. If you got nothing to eat, why don't you pay? So I said, all right, we'll pay. So people started paying money. And, as much as people like to have nice things, at the end of the day, food is still most important. It's the lowest down on the Maslow hierarchy. And so, there's no point in having a nice car if you're starving to death. So people got rid of their nice things, and slowly but surely they gave all the gold and all the silver and everything, ended up in the treasure house of Pharaoh. And now Pharaoh's got all the money. And now comes year 2. And year 2 of the famine, they come to Joseph again and they say, we got nothing to eat. And Joseph says, well, money? They said, no, we got no money left. Says, okay, so you know what? Let me have all of your animals, cattle, flock, sheep, horses, bring it in. And people start bringing in more and more and more animals. And basically, Pharaoh took over almost all of the livestock of Egypt and most of the world at the time. So now he's got all the money, he's got all the livestock. Now they come to the next year. In year 3, they come to Yosef again and they said, look, we're stuck. Got nothing left. So you got nothing left? No. Well, what's left? So the only thing we have left is our physical property, i.e. the land that we sit in. And the other thing that we have left is ourselves. So they come to Yosef and they said to Yosef, listen, let's make a deal. How about you buy us and our properties? The entire kingdom will now belong to Pharaoh as slaves. And then what we will do is we will work as serfs in your land. 20% will go to Pharaoh, the other 80% we're allowed to keep. Yosef says, good idea, let's do that. So everybody sells themselves off to Pharaoh. The only ones that don't sell them off are the religious class, HaKohanim, as it's brought in the Chumash. The religious class, the class of whoever they might have been, the priests of the time, they did not sell themselves to Pharaoh, but everybody else sells out to Pharaoh. Who else didn't sell out to Pharaoh, by the way? Joseph and his family. Why? Because as Jews, they weren't starving. They didn't need food because Joseph took care of them. So once Joseph took care of them, they didn't need food. They didn't go through the same trials and tribulation that everybody else went through. And now you have an entire state that is basically enslaved to Pharaoh. And looking at this small subsection within the population and saying to themselves, this isn't fair. We all have to work for Pharaoh. We all owe Pharaoh our 20%. And there's this little minority class over here that seems to have everything. They seem to be free. They get supported by the treasury. That's not fair. It's not right. Something's wrong over here. There's got to change. Okay? And when put over like that, you know what it sounds like? A bit like communism. You know what they used to say in Russia? Everybody's equal, but some people are more equal than others. Right? John used to deal with the Russians, right? Somebody said to me that they went to Russia quite a few times, and he says the gap between the wealthy and the poor there is appalling. It's just not to be believed what the difference between one and the other. Is there much of a middle class, or is it really very... Over the years changed, but originally, in the early 90s, that's probably what it was. You had all these guys that came out of communism that had literally nothing, and a few oligarchs that took over the state-owned stuff. So somebody took over the gas, and somebody took over probably the television, somebody else took over the electric company, and all these people suddenly owned. If you own the electricity company for the entire Russia, my goodness, that's a big electricity company to own. You will become wealthy very, very, very quickly. And these people, as I understand it, I think my father's dealt with them also, like some of these very wealthy Russians, they flaunt money like nobody's tomorrow. If they try, the only people that flaunt money in the same way is if you see some of these oil sheiks that come down to London. You see some of these guys in London, they come in the summer and they bring over their cars from Dubai. You go down Park Lane, you go down all those streets in Mayfair, and it's one Saudi Arabian and Kuwaiti car next to another, but all these supercars. Do you know what I'm talking about? Anybody know? Have anybody been down to that yet? Yeah, it's mad. And you think to yourselves, and these guys, they just drive wherever they want to, they drive as fast as they want to, they get parking tickets. When you're that wealthy, it doesn't really matter. Like they make a joke, I don't know if it's true, but they make a joke about a very, very wealthy Frum Chassid in Stamford Hill, who tells his friend, he says, I've been able to get a permit in London that allows me to park wherever I want to the entire year. And it cost me only 10 grand. Guy said, really? 10 grand? That might be worthwhile. How'd you do it? He goes, look, I paid it off in 70-pound installments each time. Yeah. But if you got that much money, that's what you do. You couldn't care less. You park wherever you want to. What's the big deal? What are they going to do? They can give you a parking ticket. What are they going to charge you? 35 quid, 50 quid, 100 quid. When you're a multi-billionaire from oil, 35 to 100 pounds, they don't even think about it. Let me park my car over here. It's not worth my while driving around Mayfair 6 times trying to find a parking space. I'll just park here. If I get a ticket, I get a ticket. Right? So they're looking at the Jewish people as this official aristocracy that seems to have all of these privileges that nobody else has. And so therefore they think to themselves, that's not fair. And when you put it like that, it doesn't sound so unreasonable. Is it so unreasonable to say that the Jewish people, there should be equality, right? Nobody deserves to be better than anybody else in the law. So why is it that way? So Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky over here says a very beautiful idea. And he says, let's go back. Let's try to figure out why is it that the Jewish people were actually not enslaved? What was the reason? Because they were Joseph's family. And who created this entire system actually for the Egyptians? Who brought all of this money into the coffers of Pharaoh? Really? Joseph. It was him. Sometimes you have some very, very wealthy people and they have some very clever underlings, and it's actually the underlings that are much cleverer than they are that invest all their money and make a lot of money. And the underlings are being paid, I don't know, £100,000 a year, but the guy at the top is making millions and billions of pounds every year of the underlings that are getting paid a decent salary, but they're really the ones that are making all the money. Sometimes they feel, I think you could feel a little bit hard done by. It's my ideas. I decide what you invest in. I make all the calls. I make all the investments. It's just that you have the capital, but it's really my brains that have created this entire thing. But Yosef HaTzadik was the one who created this entire system. It's because of his ideas, because of his brains that this all worked out that way. And therefore, you'd expect from a perspective of gratitude that Pharaoh should have the basic decency as far as gratitude is concerned, not to enslave these people. Because if these are the guys that actually brought you all the money, that brought you all the land, that brought you all of the livestock, if he did it for you, where's your Karsatov? But it's interesting. we have short memories. I'll give you another example where I find that this comes up also. How many of you have heard about, well, I guess you don't live there, you might not have heard about it, but there are many complaints you'll hear in Europe from countries where they say, oh, how much money are these survivors going to take off us? You ever heard those complaints? Germany, Austria, France, they all say these Jewish people are showing up and they're sort of stealing everything. All of these famous brands, all these famous buildings and Jews and these famous paintings, and these Jewish men and women are showing up and say, that belonged to my grandfather, that belonged to my grandmother, that belonged to my uncle. And they're taking everything away. And at one point, I know that these countries, I know because my parents used to live there, they said, like, stop. Guys, you can't keep on coming back for more and more and more. At one point or another, this coming back has to stop. Right? Now, is that something that's correct or is incorrect? So it depends. In reality, all of these countries have only paid back a fraction of what was actually taken from the Jewish people. So they're like, stop, guys, you keep on plundering our country. We're like, well, let's try to turn the clock back a little bit. Who started this whole plundering thing? Who started taking away stuff that belonged to somebody else? As far as I remember, it wasn't me, it was you guys. Right? You took my house, you took my bank account, you took my paintings, you took my real estate, you took everything that I had. Now I come back and I want to get some of it back, and you're like, okay, we'll give you one house. One house. There's not more that was taken away. What are you, some kind of money-grabbing Jew? You know, there seems to be this very unfair, uneven way that people look at things. It's the same thing over here. Sometimes you have to figure out, well, how did this start? How did this all get started in the first place? Because Joseph and his family created a system that was extremely, extremely profitable for Pharaoh. And as part of Pharaoh's gratitude towards Joseph and his family, it makes sense for Pharaoh to say, these people get off. And instead, what they say is, oh, it's not fair. It's not fair. Maybe it's not fair. They created the system. Sometimes, yeah, unfortunately, in life, it's going to be not fair that way. You have certain people that create certain things, and then they say, you know, the guy, I remember there's somebody that I knew in Vienna that married the daughter of Mr. Porsche, right? Unfortunately, I mean, okay, he's a Mr. Porsche, the old Mr. Porsche, like the grandfather was a huge anti-Semite. He had Jewish people working with him in labor camps. But this Mr. Porsche, I think, is a Buddhist. So he married a Jewish girl from Vienna, and he's a Buddhist, and you know, very, very wealthy people. Now, chances are that most children, grandchildren, et cetera, from Mr. Porsche don't drive around in a Daihatsu, right? They're not driving Subaru. What are they driving? Porsche. You're like, how does this 15 or 18-year-old kid, how does this 18-year-old kid end up in a Porsche? But I've been working all my life, and all I can drive is a Toyota. Which I tell you, his grandfather created the company, his father inherited the company, his father, like, you know, what should I tell you? It is what it is. When Mr. Porsche created the company called Porsche, his children automatically got a right to have a car, and he's going to give them all cars. And they're all going to be driving nice cars. Is it fair? I guess so. You might say it's unfair, but the truth is, if it's his company, he can decide to give the cars to whoever he wants to. So it's his Porsche, he gives that to his kids, gives that to his grandchildren. You think it's weird that an 18-year-old drives around in a Porsche? So do I. But is it unfair? No, it's not unfair. It's just weird. Think to yourself, what's this little kid doing in this fancy sports car? Why is he driving around in this convertible car that a kid of that age should not be driving? Because they don't have the maturity to be able to drive a car like that. Fine. Okay, I take your point. But there's a reason why he has the car. Because his grandfather created the company. Same thing over here. There's a reason why the Jews are free. The Jews are free because they created the system of economy over there in Egypt, and therefore they're free. And so therefore, by not recognizing that, by ignoring the fact, what you're really doing is it's being very, very nasty. You forget history and you start to become pedantic about what happens today. That's the same thing that's happening with the reparations. We forget about history. Well, what happened? Oh, that's 70, 80 years ago. Okay, but 70, 80 years ago, your entire country plundered out all of my people. What should I tell you? Yeah, but now it's too late. Now forget about that. Okay, so it's very convenient for you now to say, let's forget about it. It's very convenient for you now to say that this factory that belongs now to Mr. Schultz or whatever as it is, has to go back to Mr. Goldberg. Okay, I get that. It's not convenient. But the truth is, it's Goldberg's factory, whether you like it or not. and he deserves to have it back. And people often forget that. They only look at the here and now and they don't look at the history, and they forget to see how things developed. And therefore, Pharaoh over here, his lack of gratitude is what's pointed out by many of the Farshim. You should have been more gracious to your people that really, put you together. That's the first idea that we saw over here. Okay? Now, we'll discuss an interesting idea. Maybe we'll come back to this. Just trying to remember what we should do with this. Okay. I'm not sure if I've said this already, but I might have said this, but we'll say it again. And then we'll move on to the last bit, which is the thing that I thought was very beautiful. I wanted to share with you today. So there's an interesting story over here. Page 298. It was in those days. So at top of the page, Perek Beis Pasuk Yud Aleph, chapter 2, verse 11. It was in those days. Moshe Rabbeinu grows up. He goes out to see his brothers. He grows up. Where does he grow up? He grows up in the palace of Pharaoh. He goes out to see his brothers. He blesses him. He sees them struggling. He sees an Egyptian man. He's hitting a Jewish person, about to kill him. He looks around, and he sees there's nobody around. And he smites the Mitzri, and he kills him, and he buries him in the sand. What happens the next day? He goes out on the second day, and behold, there are two Jewish people fighting. Surprise, right? And he says to one of them, evil person, why are you hitting your friend who's also an evil person? And they say back, this is Dosan and Aviram, who become the nemesis of Moshe Rabbeinu and cause him trouble all the way through until they die in the story of Korach. But these people come up again and again and again. These are real troublemakers. And I think ever since that time, every shul and every rav has had one troublemaker at least that always makes the life a misery, that always makes life difficult. And you always have to, every shul will have one of those, by the way. Every shul, every organization has at least one that no matter what you do, there'll be a complaint. Dosam and Aviram are the first ones in line. They're like, Moshe Rabbeinu is the first rabbi. Well, we want to be the first complainers. And they're always first in line for any complaint, for any trouble, etc. they can make to Moshe Rabbeinu. So they look at Moshe Rabbeinu and they say the following, who made you in charge of us? Do you want to kill me like you killed the Egyptian yesterday? We saw you what you did yesterday. We can tattle on you. Moshe Rabbeinu was very afraid, and he says, oh no, now it's been found out. And Pharaoh hears about this. Moshe Rabbeinu runs away and he goes to Midian and he lives over there in Midian. That's the story that we have over here. And one of the questions that's asked by the Maya Mesa Sheva is a very important question. I think the answer is even more important, a very interesting answer. He says, Dosam and Aviram turn around to Moshe Rabbeinu and he says, who exactly made you in charge of it? Who do you think you are? If I was Moshe Rabbeinu, what do you think I would have said back? Right? Imagine if the CEO's son, I'm working in a factory, and the CEO's son is looking around, and he comes over, he goes, excuse me, you're not working. And who made you in charge? Do you have any idea who I am? Do you know my dad runs and owns this whole place? And I work with him and I work for him? How can you say, who made you in charge? Like, what do they mean? What did these two Jews mean by looking at Moshe Rabbeinu? Who made you in charge? What makes you any better than us? What makes you any better than us? I grew up in the house of Pharaoh. And if I grew up in the house of Pharaoh, I'm Pharaoh's grandchild, for all intents and purposes, which means I am way, way, way up the totem pole from you guys. How dare you even talk to me like that? How dare you question my authority? What do they mean with that? So Rav Schwab says a very beautiful idea, and I'll tell the story, which I told recently. I think I told the story recently, but I know I've told the story recently. I think I told recently over here. If I did, I apologize, but I always like the story anyway. So there was a story of the Divrei Chaim of Tzanz. The Divrei Chaim was a very famous rabbi of Tzanz, and he was a very young man. I think he was still, between 8 and 10 years old. And what they did is they decided in those days already that they would arrange a marriage for him for when he got older. So they arranged a marriage. Now, obviously, he didn't get married at 8, but they arranged a marriage and they broke a plate and they said, yes, Mr. So-and-so, Rabbi Chaim Halberstam, is going to be marrying Miss whatever her name is. So they bring him into the room and he's about to meet everyone. And they said to him, oh, Chaimke, do you want to meet your father-in-law? He goes, no, I don't have to meet him. I know exactly who he is. He says, really? Where's your father? He goes, that guy over there. That one. You're right. How did you know? He says, I don't like him already. That's what he said. I can already feel an animosity building. Okay. But the idea of this, which Rav Schwab says, is that animosity is a very, very strong thing. Hatred is an extremely strong emotion. And what it does also is it brings out A, the worst in us, but B, the other thing that it brings out in us, unfortunately, is the truth. And I'm going to give you an example, not so much from hatred, but from anger, but I think they go together. Okay? You have 2 friends, and they've been friends for years, and they've been managing fine, etc., etc. And one day, A and B get into a fight. And A says something he shouldn't have said, and B gets angry, and he says to him, oh, yeah? You think you're such hot stuff, right? And then B lets out a tirade. Okay? Now, let me ask you, afterwards, when B and A want to reconcile, and it's the same with spouses, by the way, afterwards, when you want to reconcile, how hard is that going to be? Very. Do you know why? Because when I push you into a corner, and when I push your buttons, and you lose your temper, and you get angry, and you start to have that feeling like, ah! Do you know what comes out very often? Deep down, all those buried truths that you feel about your friend, that you're like, I'm never going to share them with him, right? So you have friends. Everybody's got friends that we're all flawed people. Hashem has never made a perfect person. He doesn't make perfect people. He makes flawed people. And part of what makes us interesting, what makes the world interesting, is the fact that we're flawed, right? So God makes us flawed. So every single one of our friends, do you have any friends that have 0 flaws? Do you have any friends that have no flaws whatsoever? No, I don't. Your wife's got no flaws. I know that. Well said. Thank you. No, you're going to get into trouble now. You get into trouble for saying the right thing, Michael. My wife's got no flaws. How dare you say that about me? Yeah? But we all know that all of our friends, and yes, even our spouses, they have flaws. And by the way, originally, I think there's a lot of these flaws that annoy us. But I've spoken sometimes to people that have lost, unfortunately, very good friends or lost spouses. And sometimes those annoying flaws are things that we miss about them. Do you know what I miss? I miss his corny jokes, right? But every time he told you a joke when he was alive, you were like, so bad. You stop telling those terrible jokes. But once he goes at the end of 120, suddenly when he goes, you're like, oh, I miss those jokes. You're like, you missed those jokes. They were rubbish. They were awful. I know, but I miss them. Okay, take it. Yeah. Sometimes you just miss even the annoying things we miss about other people. But you have friends and you know the flaws and they know me and they know my flaws. And look, but part of friendship is that I choose to see the positive in him, her, rather than seeing the negative. That's what friendship's all about. So there's so many positive things about this person. He's a giving person. He's a nice person. I like spending time with them, and they're intelligent and they have what to say on lots of topics and we share interests, et cetera, et cetera. And so we're good friends because we have all of that. And in the end, what about the fact that he's got an annoying snicker? So I don't have to tell him about his annoying snicker, even if he laughs in a very annoying way. If he's a good friend, big deal. So he laughs in an annoying way. I don't want to ruin a friendship. You're not going to lose a good friend about his annoying snicker, right? But when the time comes and you get angry and that little monster inside you is unleashed, what's going to come out? You're going to start telling him, by the way, whenever I tell you a joke, you are the most annoying people to tell a joke, to. Every time you laugh, it drives me crazy. Have you ever listened to yourself laugh? As high as a banshee. What's with you? Yeah, you sound like a hyena. Like, stop it. Okay, fine. You said it. You calm down, he calmed down. In the back of his mind, will he ever forget that, what you said about his laugh? You never forget that. Do you know why? Because in that moment, what does he know? What does he know about you? You're actually telling him what's deep down buried inside you, how you feel about him. You didn't just wake up now when you got angry and say he's got an annoying laugh. You actually believed he had an annoying laugh all along. And you might have believed he wasn't intelligent enough or whatever else it is about him. But you know what? As a friend, he's good. But when he pushes your button, all those truths come out. It's very hard to bring them back in. Once you've said them, to say, oh, you know what? That thing I said about your laugh, I didn't mean it. What if the other person goes, yeah, that's fine. But in the back of your mind, in the back of my mind, what do you say to yourself? I now know what you truly think about me. Because you spilled the beans. Unfortunately, you couldn't keep your mouth shut and you spilled the beans. And now I know exactly what you think about me. No? Yeah, that's what happens. And hatred does that. That's what anger does, and hatred does it as well. And hatred allows us really to focus on all the negative things about somebody else and to really see them for who they are. And they, for some reason, took a dislike to Moshe Rabbeinu. And when they took a dislike to Moshe Rabbeinu, they could see into his essence. The shame is that people that dislike us, they can see, when people talk badly about Jews, oftentimes they're lying, but many times some of the things that they have to say, they're right. Okay, you know what? We're not always the best drivers. We sometimes are a little bit too demanding. There are things that people say about us that are true, right? Okay, but every nationality has their mishigas, right? There's things we can say about the English and things we can say about the French. We can say things about the Americans, say things about any nationality. So you can say things about Jews, that doesn't mean anything because we can say things about everyone. Okay, but when you dislike a person, you'll pick on those points. You pick those points and you make a big fuss about them and you talk about them and you make people meshugah about it, etc., etc. And that is what they see over here. They're looking at Moshe Rabbeinu and they can look through him because they dislike him. They can look through him properly. And therefore, when they look at this kid, they say to themselves, yes, I see the grandson of Pharaoh. But I see this as just another Yiddish kid. This is a Yiddish kid who's gotten himself out of work and is living in the palace, in the lap of luxury, and with all this mazel that he has, who doesn't deserve that job. He doesn't deserve to be where he is. And therefore, when he looks at Moshe Rabbeinu, he says, who do you think you are? Who do you think I am? I'm Pharaoh's grandson. No, I see you. I know exactly who you are. You are not Pharaoh's grandson. I can tell. By one look at you, I can see that that's false. It's amazing what hatred can do. It's amazing what hatred can uncover in other people and allow other people to see in others. That's a terrible trait, right? As we talked about before, lack of gratitude is a terrible trait. Hatred is a terrible trait. And both of those bring out really bad things in us. But now we're going to talk about another trait, which is a beautiful trait. And in that, we want to say 2 points. And with that, we'll finish tonight. Although that probably will still take us to almost 9 o'clock. So Moshe Rabbeinu is looking after his father-in-law's, Yisro's sheep. And he takes them into the desert, and he comes to a place called Sinai, and God appears to him in the burning bush, and Moshe Rabbeinu comes forward, and he wants to see what God wanted, and God says to him, don't come any closer, this is a holy land, and I'm going to, he says to him, I saw what the Egyptians have done to the Jews, and I want you to go, and I want you to take out the Jews from Egypt. And now we're looking at page 302, verse 11, chapter 3, Perek Gimel Pasuk Yud Aleph. Moshe Rabbeinu says to Hashem, Mi anochi, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh? Who am I to go to Pharaoh and to get the Jewish people out of the land of Egypt? Kosh Baruch Hu says, because I will be with you. And this is a sign that I sent you. When you take the Jews out of Egypt, you will serve God on this mountain. Okay, so that's a very strange sign, by the way. The whole conversation is very, very strange. Moshe Rabbeinu says, who am I? And God says, I'm with you, and I'll give you a sign that you're going to take the Jewish people out of Egypt, because after you take the Jewish people out of Egypt, it's going to be, you're going to come to this mountain. So almost like, I'll give you a sign that summer is coming. The proof in the pudding is when it stops raining, you'll know it's summer, right? But what came first, like the chicken or the egg? Like, how can I prove something from something that's going to happen much, much later? I'll prove to you the Jews will get out of Egypt because much later they're going to serve God on this mountain. Which means they're going to get the Torah on Har Sinai. So what does that mean? So Mesher Chochma, Rameir Simcha Dvinsk, explains beautifully. He says it's very interesting that Moshe Rabbeinu, what do we know about Moshe Rabbeinu? Moshe Rabbeinu was the humblest man of all people, and yet Moshe Rabbeinu was the greatest amongst all people. So that seems to be a very strange paradox. How can the greatest person be the humblest person? In general, nowadays, we won't find that. The greatest people, they usually have a big ego. They like to be called the GOAT, right? Greatest of all time. And they have what to be proud of. I'm the greatest footballer. I'm the greatest tennis player. I'm the greatest investor. I'm the greatest CEO. I got the biggest company. I'm going to be sending spaceships up to Mars, whatever else it is. I'm creating cars, and we're buying Twitter. All these people have real visions of grandeur of themselves. It's interesting. I don't know if you've ever watched it. There's in America, they have something called Shark Tank, which here is called the Dragon's Den. Similar idea. And you watch, especially the Shark Tank, the American Shark Tank. Have you ever watched it, John? Yeah. A lot of these guys have a huge ego. A huge ego, and you can tell it. Now, you might say, well, look, the guy started with nothing. He built himself up to 50 million, 100 million, 500 million, $1 billion. He deserves to be proud of himself. All right, fair on him. But sometimes you hear the way they talk and the way they sort of say, oh, I'm not going on that journey. That's not from me. The way they talk about other people. It's horrible. It's horrible to hear the way they, one guy calls himself Mr. Wonderful, and the way they sort of talk to each other about I don't even know how you made any money. You have no idea about investing. Here's two people that have $1 billion each. Why are you talking to each other like that? You both done very, very well. Just be quiet about each other. This horrible ego thing. But when somebody's successful, part of the success is that it goes to the head. And yet Moshe Rabbeinu is the most successful Jew ever. He speaks to God face to face, and yet he's also the most humble person ever. There seems to be a bit of a strange paradox going on over here. And so here, Mesher Chochma speaks about the idea of humility. And humility in this instance comes not from Moshe Rabbeinu saying to himself, oh, I'm a nothing and a nobody. Because Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't say to himself, he's a nothing and a nobody. And we see a few times in the Chumash that Moshe Rabbeinu has to exert his authority, and so he does. He exerts his authority very strongly. Sometimes the Jews listen and sometimes they don't. But Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't go, I can't tell the Jews what to do. It's not right. I'm just a humble person. Moshe Rabbeinu bangs down and he says, guys, we're going. Guys, this is wrong. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Moshe Rabbeinu is not, so he's not a walkover, and yet he's the humblest person. So the humility there, he says, comes from the fact of what? The more you know God, the more you know what is really great, the more humility you'll have. Okay? So let's put it this way, right? Let's say you have a whole bunch of young guys, and one guy's earning 50 grand, and one guy's earning 100 grand, and one guy's earning 200 grand, and the third guy's earning 500 grand. And he's out earning all of them. So you might say, oh, he's going to have a real ego because he's out earning all his friends. Yeah, but you know what? If his brother is earning $1 billion, is he going to have a huge ego about himself? He's going to be like, yeah, I earned 500 grand, but he earns $1 billion. And I know that between 500 grand and $1 billion, there's a lot of zeros still. It's a long way to go. So when you understand that there are people so much bigger than you, even if you're big in relation to everybody else, you know that you're not really big, right? The biggest kid in the second grade is still very small. You can have a kid who's this high or even this high, and he's 4'5". And in year 2 or year 3, at being 4'5" is massive, right? But I'm an adult. Yeah. So I look down at this kid who's 4'5", and I say, but you're still 8 years old. I don't care. Yeah. But I'm 4'5". Yeah, but you're a kid. Go away. Right. And you have to know where you come from. And if the kid realizes he's a child, even though he's been created taller than all of his peers, he knows he's not an adult. Just the fact that he's half a head taller than everybody else doesn't make him big. He knows there's so many bigger people out there. That's the same with Moshe Rabbeinu. I'm the biggest person amongst all the other people. But the more I know about God, the more I know that the biggest person amongst all the other people is still a nothing and a nobody compared to God. So how can I sort of say yeah, but there are a lot of people down there smaller than me. He says, yeah, but I know that God's infinite. When I have an understanding of God and his infinity, I can't start becoming all full of myself. because who am I compared to God? And the more you know God, the more you'll have that humility. And so Moshe Rabbeinu has that humility. And therefore God says to him, that humility, he says, Vayomer ki eya imach, he says to him, I will be with you, meaning the humility that you show is going to be your greatest quality. I.e., when you see a great religious leader and you speak to the person and realize the guy is actually so full of himself, where does your esteem for that individual go? Write down. Have you ever met a rabbi? Like you meet rabbis, some of them are phenomenal speakers and they're phenomenal educators and they're great at connecting with people. When you come to them and says, that was a great sermon. He goes, well, I only give the best, right? Yep. If your rabbi said that to you, if you said to the rabbi, you said to him, like, that was a really amazing sermon today. And the rabbi says, well, I only give the best sermons. I only try to give the best sermons. Where would your esteem for that man go? It plummets, right? You won't look at the guy who goes, he's right. He only gives the best sermons. He must be the best rabbi out there. You'd say to yourself, even if you think that, my goodness, you shouldn't say it. What's the matter with you, right? There's a famous story with Rav Yecheskel Abramsky, who was the head of the London Beth Din, and there was an argument about Shechita, and he came into the court, and he took the oath over there at the court, and they said to him, Rabbi Abramsky says, yes. He says, we've been told that you are the foremost legal halachic authority on ritual slaughter in the UK. Is that correct? He says, yes, it is correct. So they're looking at him, he says, well, Rabbi Abramsky, a little bit of humility. He goes, Your Honor, I'm under oath, right? That's what he said back to him. Meaning, he knew he happened to have been the greatest legal authority on the rules of Shechita. And under oath, he had to admit it. He would never have said it any other time. He wouldn't say to people, by the way, do you know who I am? Do you know how much I know? Because at the end of the day, as much as I know, there are people that know so much more than I do. And the more you know great people, the more you realize how small you are. And the less you hang out with great people, when you achieve a tiny sliver of greatness, the more you shout about it from the rooftops. Hey, I made 50,000 pounds. All right, shut up. The people making a lot more money than you. Like, don't get all excited. Yeah, but all my friends make only 10. Okay, I know, fine, 50,000 compared to your friends is a lot of money. But it's not a lot of money on the scheme of things of people that are making billions of pounds every year. It's not a lot of money. So you don't know anybody big. So you think you're big because you're really small. And that's what Moshe Rabbeinu says. But the greatest trait of Moshe Rabbeinu is his humility. Moshe Rabbeinu's most endearing trait is his humility. The fact that everybody realized that even though this man is the greatest man out there, he does not behave towards anybody else like he's one up on them, even though he definitely is. He's one up on everyone. He doesn't behave like that. And Moshe Rabbeinu says, so Moshe Rabbeinu says, who am I that I will go to Pharaoh? Who am I? And God says to him, because I will be with you, i.e., you're right. But that's exactly why people are going to choose you. I will be with you. And the fact that I am with you means you understand who you are. You understand how small you are. And that's what makes you successful. So when you say, what's going to make me successful? It's exactly that question that's going to make you successful. When you realize that you actually have nothing compared to God, then God says, okay, then I'll make you a success. And when you're like, I'm so big, I don't need God. God's like, you want to manage on your own? Go ahead. You want to do it yourself? Go ahead. Do it yourself. See how clever you are. And I will give you another sign, a symbol that I've sent you. When you come out of Egypt, you know where we're going to get the Torah? Where did the Jews get the Torah? Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai, there's a whole medrash about the different mountains that argued about which mountain is the greatest mountain and the tallest mountain. And Mount Sinai says, I don't get the Torah because I'm the smallest. And God says, specifically on you, I'm going to give the Torah. Because I don't want to give the Torah on Mount Everest, because that Mount Everest is going to say, I was the biggest, I was the strongest. And Torah is not like other wisdoms. Torah is to be found amongst the humble. You don't find Torah amongst people that are full of themselves. Somehow it doesn't really enter them the same way. And so God says, that's what I'm going to make you. I'm going to send you. People are going to know it's you. People are going to know that this is your endearing trait and this is why you are special. And the sign and the symbolism that you are special, et cetera, is that the Torah is going to be given on a mountain that's also going to be specifically a mountain that is, that's the smallest mountain. However, now that we've said that, there's a very interesting point that's brought out over here by the Oznaim Torah, and that's also important to know. So we go back to page 300. On page 300, Sorry, page 302. 302. So Moshe Rabbeinu makes his way to this burning bush, and God says, Vayomer, and God says, top of the page, 302, verse 6, Perek Gimel Pasuk Vav. Vayomer, and God says, Anoch Elokei Avicha, I'm the God of your fathers. Elokei Avram Yitzchak Yaakov, I'm the God of Avram Yitzchak and Yaakov. Vayastem Moshe Ponov. Moshe Rabbeinu covers his face, Ki Yoreh, because he was afraid from looking in towards the visage of God, whatever that means, what he was able to see. And there's a very strange medrash, because at a later point, much further down, when the Jews made the golden calf, Moshe Rabbeinu says to God, Hareini nos kivanecha, show me your glory. And God says, no, I'm not going to show you my glory. You can see me from behind, but you can't see me from in front. And the medrash basically says the following: when I wanted, you didn't want. Now that you want, I don't want. I.e., I wanted to show you my glory here in Shemos. And what did you do? You covered your face, you covered your eyes, you didn't want to look. Now comes Parashas Kisisa, and you want to see me. God says to him, it's too late now. You lost your chance. And the Oznaim Matar points out over here the one downside of humility. That is, whilst humility is a wonderful trait, and everybody should strive to become a humble person, but don't allow your humility to stop you from becoming great. I.e., if you say to someone, you really have great potential to become a great Talmid Chacham, you're a clever man, and you sit and you learn well, and you could really become a rabbi, you can become a great rabbi. He says, no, not me, I'm nothing, right? That's a shame. Because you know what, people who say they're really nothing, what do they often become? Nothing, right? Because they have no ambition, they don't believe that they're worth anything, they don't put themselves out, etc., etc. And therefore, oftentimes, you need to find the people with the ambition to become something. Very rarely do unambitious people end up becoming really, really great, because they have no ambition to become anything. And here says, the Oznayim Torah was the downfall of Moshe Rabbeinu's humility. On the one hand, his humility was the trait that made him as great as he was. But on the other hand, in this specific instance, the humility was misguided. When God says to him, I'm going to give you something amazing, and he says, no, thank you, because he's being humble, and God goes, why'd you say that? That's not a clever thing to say. That makes no sense. Why are you saying, I'm about to give you this wonderful present, and you say, no, I don't deserve it? Well, who else is going to get it? God says, I want to give you this present, so take it, right? There, in that instance, humility goes against you. And sometimes you have to know how to take also. It's interesting. You know, sometimes I've I know some people that are friendly with, very well-off people. They're quite friendly with them. And sometimes these well-off people, I've called them up and he says, we'd like to take you out. We want to go out to eat. And my friend told me, we don't feel comfortable with it. I said, so what do you do? He says, well, we go anyway. Why? Why do you go if you don't feel comfortable with it? Because by allowing them to take us out, it's our way of giving to them. It's actually not our way of taking from them. If you are somebody well-to-do and they want to give you something and you don't allow that person to give you something, right? Now, I'm not talking about extras, but they want to be nice to you. So they're not saying like, here's a 50,000 pound car. Taking you out to mozzarella will spend 50 pounds on you, right? Come, can I take you out? No, I have food at home. So what are you really doing to these people? Are you being nice to them? Or are you actually being mean to them? Now, under the guise of being humble, under the guise of being nice, you don't want to accept the present. But in reality, by not accepting the present, what are you doing really? It's really insulting. It's actually insulting them because they're like, I'd like to give you something. No, I don't want to take from you. Why? I'm not the taker kind of person. Yeah. But I'm asking you now to take, not so much because I need you to take, because I want to give. As parents, that's the same thing. We want to give to our children. Oftentimes, our kids don't even want to take some of the things we want to give them. We want to give our kids things like, can I buy this? No, I don't need it. Come, I'll get you one. No, I don't need it. When the child says, no, I don't need it, what does it almost do to us as a parent? Makes me spare. Okay, sorry. We shouldn't. Today, that's a word we don't want to say. That's a bad word. That's a naughty word. Spare is the wrong word for today, right? What makes you feel spare? Like, as a parent, like, Daddy, I can do everything. I can afford everything. I can do everything on my own. That's true. You know what? many times, or hopefully always, kids become independent. They're able to afford their own things, etc., etc. So when my kids come back to me, even if my kids were able, got good jobs and they were able to afford all the things, but I want to take my grandchildren out for pizza, my son says to me, Daddy, it's okay, we can afford pizza also. It's not about affordability. It's allowing me to give to you, right? And by saying, well, I can afford pizza, so don't take me out for pizza because I can pay for it myself. I'm not trying to insinuate you don't have the money to pay for the pizza. I'm trying to give you something because as a father, I want to do something for my children, my grandchildren. Not because you don't have money, because I want to give you something. And here Moshe Rabbeinu gets the opportunity to receive HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Moshe Rabbeinu says, no, I can't take it. I can't take it. And God says, well, you missed it then. Moshe Rabbeinu finally sort of like wakes up to the whole fact and says, oh, you know what I wanted? Now it's too late. God says, now it's too late. When I wanted to give it, you should have taken it, because you shouldn't have allowed your humility to cloud the fact that I wanted to give you a special present. And taking that present from me would not have compromised your humility. You would have remained a humble person, but you would have allowed me to give you something special. Now it's too late. So those are the ideas I want to share with you tonight. Thank you all of you who came in person. Thank you to those on Facebook Live. Thank you to those on Zoom, and thank you to those on Torah. Anytime you want to get in touch, davideisenberg@gmail.com. And Mr. Shem, look forward to seeing everybody next week.